All right, looks like our webinar is recording. And with that, I will turn it over to Jessy Griffith, who is the Teen Services Librarian at the Independence Branch of the Kenton County Public Library. Take it away, Jessy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessy, like she said. This is the first time I've done this, so I'm used to having people in front of me for presentations. So can everyone hear me okay? Awesome, thank you. Okay, so what we are talking about today is basically the idea of walkability as well as how we need to factor that into library services to teenagers and all teenagers in the community. And how, not only how we factor that in, but which factors, and also which are the factors that we have to share with our managers who might be at other branches and not quite get that. And there, of course, is also, when you're dealing with teens, too, they're starting to be independent, but they're not all the way independent as we think of it with driving. So just some different things to think about, and the idea behind calling it I Couldn't Get a Ride is how many times I've heard that, how many times I've been at class visits and or just teens have come up to me and said, oh, I really wanted to do this. They apologized to me, like they've missed like my birthday party or something. I really wanted to come to this, but I couldn't get a ride. So just trying to figure out how to serve everyone and them. So what are we talking about when we talk about walkability? We're talking about safety. We're talking about, are there crosswalks around? We're talking about, will drivers stop? What are the speed limits around? We're also talking about the perception of safety. Are you in a community where parents feel comfortable saying to their 12, 13-year-olds, yeah, head to the library? Or walk around, you know, even just some communities, an 11-year-old will run to the corner store for their parents, and some communities, their parents won't give them that opportunity. Another thing that we talk about when we talk about walkability is places to go and location. Are there other things around the library that they might want to go to? You know, if it's a parent is running a bunch of errands, then is the library one of those errands? Will they bring their teen along? Or is everything else somewhere else? You know, in my community, we're maybe about a mile, mile and a half from the high school, but much closer than that is a Kroger with a Starbucks in it, an ice cream place, and a lot of like a McDonald's and other things. So which direction are most teens going to go after school? Towards where all of the stuff is, or towards where one thing is? And the other thing that I always consider, because if you guys remember a few years ago this summer that it seemed like gas prices went really high up, and there were a lot of articles about how libraries were seeing higher usage and higher checkouts as people were spending more money on gas. They were looking for other free things. But if you are in an area where you have to use gas to get to the library, and families, you know, have to choose between gas to go to work and gas to go to the library, especially honestly to bring their teen to the library for something fun, that's always a concern that you're going to have. And then the other walkability factor is how close are you to homes? Or if you're in an ex-urban community like I am in Independence, you know, the suburbs, they're kind of far out, that kind of think they're a small town, or if you're in a small town or a rural community, you know, sometimes it can be the difference between where they decide to build that development or where they decide to build that apartment complex. So we have a poll set up for whether or not your library is in a walkable community. If you guys wouldn't mind sharing that just to see. I think it's always good as a reminder that we all might work with teens, but we all have very different communities, and some things translate and some things don't. You know, sometimes things work really well for one person, but not another one. Yes, Krista, go vote. Just a good blanket statement. So, Krista, do you put this broadcast results? That was going to be, okay. So it looks like there's kind of a mix. I think that the no, but there's public transportation is another really interesting factor for the perception of walkability and the perception of safety. I grew up taking the bus everywhere, but I had, even in the same community, I had family and friends who thought it was crazy that we took public transit. Nothing bad ever happened to me. Nothing bad ever happened on public transit to my friends that took public transit, but there's the perception of safety rather than whether or not it's actually safe. Okay. Shall we move along from the jackalope now? Okay. So when we talk about walkability and getting a ride, then we have to kind of start talking about, well, then how are they getting there? So this bike safety rodeo was an idea I had tied in with the perception of safety. So a couple years ago, I was like, we're going to have a bike safety rodeo, and kids will come, and teens will come, and they'll be all ages, and their parents will come, and then they'll learn about bike safety, and their parents will be like, it's totally safe to ride your bike to the library. And then they'll ride their bike to programs, and then they'll come to programs. So we did this whole thing. We worked with the police department. We worked with our local Parks and Rec group, and it was a great event, except for two things. Families do not bring their teen family members to all ages events at my library. Even families where I know they have teens, they will come with their younger children, leave the teens at home. So this happened with this. This has always happened with our summer reading kickoff events as well. The other thing that happened was everyone drove to it. They drove their cars to our parking lot. They took their bikes out of their cars. They did our little obstacle course. They put their bikes back in their cars and then drove away. So it was an event that was great to do, but it really taught me a lesson in this is how people are getting to the library. This is how people are using the library. This is how people are using family events. So one thing that I've noticed too is it's not only an issue of them getting there, it's also an issue of them being picked up. Sometimes I will see my kids at, especially Friday night programs or programs over the summer. They'll all be dropped off separately, but they'll be dropped off with giant book bags, and then one parent will pick them up and they'll have a slumber party or a sleepover. I think there's a lot, because if you have a 2-hour event, then that can be difficult, especially, again, if there's nothing else around your library, to convince the parent of a teen to drop them off and then pick them up again. So the Friday night programs have always worked well for me, and I do kind of wonder if that's the same reason. And of course, the other side of that too is if you are near a school or a place that's easier for parents to pick up their teens after school, then you can do a lot more after-school programming because that's when they're there. It's all about kind of figuring out the schedules of your community as well. I think a lot of us know the idea that you don't program Wednesday nights or whatever night is church night, but over the summer I've found Wednesday afternoons work really well for me because everyone is already in the area near the library. So I can just say, oh, well, stop here before you go to church, because a lot of that group is coming anyway. Yes, Krista, exactly. Don't compete with things if you don't need to. Oh, I keep hitting the wrong key, so I apologize for that, if there seem to be a little strange pauses. Also, someone tell me to slow down if I need to, or speed up if I need to do that. So another thing that I noticed was, so I knew that transportation was a problem, and I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I knew that transportation was a problem. So one of my ideas was, well, can I organize carpools of parents? And so that's something that I always kind of think that someone in a library that's an untapped market is, we love organizing things. We're trying to get people in our doors. Why don't we organize groups of people to bring them into our doors? Then I remembered in my community that they don't really carpool. A lot of times if I don't time it well enough and am still at a school for a school visit, when school lets out, I get stuck in all of the parents come and pick up their kids in a line, like a giant line of cars, and then they take their particular kids, even at the high schools around me, and they head out. Sometimes they run errands, sometimes they just go home. So if it's not a community that carpools, then it might not work well. What I've tried instead, and I've done this for the last 2 years, is I set aside a little bit of my summer programming money to give a contest for the parents. Anytime you bring someone to a teen program over the summer, you fill out an entry form, and once a month I do a drawing for a gift card at a gas station. And that, partially it's there to bribe their parents for bringing them, and partially it's there to let them know as a thank you. Hey, thanks for bringing your kid out to this event. Thanks for doing this for them. And so Krista has this working with a partner to engage parents during such programs. I love the idea, if you have the space and the people, to have programming at the same time, to have children's programming for younger siblings, especially. So where I'm at, we count teens as that's middle school and high school. So that's 6th through 12th grade. And I run into a lot of sad 4th graders, basically. And you can start coming to teen programs the summer before 6th grade. So I run into a lot of sad incoming 5th graders who, if I don't shut the doors, then they'll stand outside and just make like a very sad puppy face. But if you could have maybe a program for 4th and 5th graders going on at the same time, then that would be a great way to maybe try and bring in some more of them and also create a continuum of library services with all ages. Thank you, Holly. You just saw that. I do also have the form still somewhere as a publisher file. If anyone is interested, just send me an email and I can send it to you. If you don't reinvent the wheel, don't recreate that form. You are welcome to use the same one if you want to try this parent taxi contest. And if anybody has any more questions about any of the stuff I'm talking about, just let me know. So one of the things that we are really talking about, I think, when we talk about stuff like getting teens to the library and just teen services in general are, what are we doing serving teens? Are we having a series of events that maybe they come to, maybe they don't, and we're concerned about every teen we see coming to that week's event or that afternoon's event? Or are we serving teens in whatever capacity? So we've got our friend Jess here from Gilmore Girls. He doesn't want to be bothered. He just wants to sit there and read. He doesn't want to come to a program. But he still wants to be served. He still should be served by the library in some capacity. So just kind of trying to figure out what that is. Jane, on the other hand, wants a place, a community, a third space to hang out with her friends. But her parents might not see the value in driving her somewhere to do just that. They all have to be served in different ways, which brings us to my favorite thing, all the different sorts of teens we have. They're all over the place. You have to think there's a lot of different teens and all over your community and all over your library, and they might want different things. I was talking at, I think, KPLA with someone about the teens that they know are reading. They see them, they check out lots of books, they talk about books with them, but they don't enter the summer reading contest. And then I also ran into my anime club kids. I run a monthly anime club at the library. I know they read a ton of manga. I know that I let them enter the summer reading contest for coming to programs. None of them entered the summer reading contest. But then I have other teens who I almost never see, and I know what they read specifically because I look at their summer reading entries. So it's just all, everyone wants something a little different, and rather than trying to have one blanket thing that serves all of them, trying to figure out multiple things that may also include a different library branch or someone else in the library. Now let's talk about what parents will drive their teens to at the library. So this is the point when I am in front of people where I point to things. Krista, do I have a pointer? If I don't, so if everyone looks at this art club flyer at the top, so the art club flyer, that I've always done craft programs, and for a while I think a lot of libraries have started branding and marketing their craft programs as maker spaces or maker programs, which has worked really well for them. What I found that has worked the best for me is I have called anything even remotely art club. I did a digital movie making workshop and we called it art club. I had a friend of mine who does graphic design create this logo, and I think one of the reasons why my art clubs, I do them weekly over the summer, same time each week, and then monthly about during the school year. one of the things that I think has made this so successful and why so many parents have driven their teens, especially younger teens, to the library is it's not just because it's Wednesday afternoon. It's not just because it's a free art instruction, which a lot of them are not getting in the schools around me. It's also, the flyers all look more official. I use the same font family, I use the same color family, and they've got a logo, which a lot of the art club is separate, which a lot of our stuff, a lot of our marketing materials at the library don't always have. Oh, am I still cutting out? Thanks for the heads up, Christina. Okay. Great. I'm going to continue talking, and if anything sounds strange, just let us know. Awesome, thanks. So if we go clockwise, the next is late night gaming. Now, that's called late night gaming because I can't just call it come hang out at the library, but that's basically what it is. And I've had to explain this to a lot of adults, parents or my coworkers would be like, so what games do they play? They run around, they talk to each other in a setting where the same way we would go meet our friends after work. They need that place. But their parents, I think especially for younger teens, like 11, 12-year-old, the middle school ones, don't necessarily know or don't necessarily understand yet that they need that space away from their parents where they can choose who they're going to be spending that time with. And the Super Smash Saturday, this is also up here because a couple years ago I saw someone online was kind of talking about how they thought Super Smash programs were kind of played out. At their library, they didn't work anymore. I don't remember who this was. I might have even made it up. This is a straw librarian. And I thought they still work incredibly well for me. I have a lot of kids, and it's not even about, some of it is about the tournament, but it's also just about being around other people who love the game, and you can really nerd out about the game all together. They bring their DSs, because you can set up, with the Wii U, you can set up your DS so you can play. Some of them just play each other on the side, and they hang out, they have fun, but there's a focus that their parents see a value to. I think, Krista, that's a really good point, too. We are a space about typically get in trouble for in another environment. Now, that has pros and cons because on some sides, I do have some of the kids who are kind of known bullies at the school who will come to no other event but will come to late night gaming. But on the other side, they can be a lot more open about themselves and their identities than sometimes they feel comfortable at school or around parents or teachers. So we're an important space for that as well. Now let's talk about failures and things parents won't bring their teens to. So this Teen After Hours, if you look at this flyer, this is the exact same thing, pretty much, as late night gaming. The times are slightly different because we are open different hours on Saturdays than we are Fridays. The name is slightly different. I had a fraction of the people at this program that I've ever had at a late night gaming event. The late night gaming that we had in August towards the end of the summer had, I want to say 60 kids at. When I did this Saturday one, this was a couple years ago, there were maybe 12. And that's because one of our part-timers called his brother and brought his brother and his friends over. I think at that event we actually had more people trying to come into the library because they never remember that we close at 5 on Saturdays than we had people who were there for the actual event. But you have to be given that room to experiment. You have to be given the space to say, well, I know this is successful here. Let's see if it's successful at another time. Or I know that movie programs don't really bring a lot of teens at the Independence Library. I think partially because it's not seen as community, it's not seen as doing something with other people, and there's a lot of the idea of, well, we have that at home. You can get that on Netflix. Why am I going to drive you to the library if you can just watch that at your house? So I did try doing more of like a yell at the screen, make fun of the movie style events. And that worked for a little while, but then my group of teens who are coming to events changed. And two things changed with that. I think I mentioned in the chat that I have fandom teens. I have fandom teens that come to events over the summer. I do not have fandom teens that come to fandom-style events over the summer. I'm not exactly sure why yet. That's kind of my next thing to figure out. But I do wonder if maybe this Sharknado 2 Bad Movie Night falls under that fandom things that didn't happen, that people don't come to over the summer. The other thing is I have very young teens. They aren't always, sometimes they still ask me if they can go to the bathroom. They still ask me if they can have the snacks that are set out in front. And I wonder, too, how much of it is the discomfort of yelling at a screen, or that interactivity is maybe more learned than we think it is, and they just haven't learned that yet. So these are some experiments that have failed. But I think that's important, too. You know, when you send in your monthly numbers to your manager, that's not always the story. The story that if they just want the numbers, then that story might be, oh, well, there were only 2 people for Sharknado 2. But the story behind that is, well, this is why I did this. This is what I've learned from this mistake. This is what I might try next time. So, ooh, yes, stories as advocacy. Good point, Krista. So this is, we were talking earlier about cross-planning programs for parents. This is my favorite GIF ever. If you guys are not watching Fresh Off the Boat yet, Krista and I highly, highly recommend it. It's really funny. All the characters are great. The mom might be my favorite TV mom ever. So this is little Eddie. He wants his mom to get out of his fantasy. It's his space. Eddie is 11. That's his space, and his mom is busting in. I think his mom might ask if he needs another snack or something like that in this clip of the TV show. They are 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds. They're starting to be independent. Their parents, I've had parents that refuse to leave teen programs before, and I think partially it's about that independence. It's part and them maybe not quite getting that that's the developmental stage their kid's at. I think part of it is if you are, some of us are at libraries where parents can stay in story time and parents can stay in children's programs. So I think sometimes it's just parents are used to that. I've definitely had that happen where parents bring their 11 or 12-year-olds to the first teen program and are surprised that they're not allowed to hang out in the room anymore. And then I think the final factor is, well, what else are they going to do? if there's nothing else around your library. So I always point out to parents, especially the parents who I walk outside the meeting room and they're just kind of sitting right there. I always point out, here's where all our magazines are. These are the comfiest chairs in the library. And if you lift these up, you can check out all these magazines too. So that trying to let them see that it gives them a little bit of a break as well. Or sometimes I just have some parents who maybe they're not used to the idea that they can leave their teen at the library yet, but once they realize that, then I have parents who, I mentioned earlier, that Kroger that has a Starbucks in it, they go, and I think some of like the parent friends go and get coffee and then pick their kids up again at 8. So if you have something like that nearby, might be a good idea if you can get a package of $5 Starbucks cards, and they also work at the Starbucks that are in bigger stores, your grocery stores and things like that. Maybe just hand them out to parents. Hey, go have a cup of coffee. Now that, might be a good Teen Read Week thing if you've got program planning for Teen Read Week. I literally just had this idea now, so that's why it seems a little scattered. But I'm going to make a note of that. Bribe parents. If there's a McDonald's nearby, even you could get those little McDonald's gift certificates, but I think there was always a house that gave those out for Halloween every year. But something that says to parents, not so that it just doesn't sound like you're kicking them out, or it just doesn't sound like you're not wanted here, but to make them feel like this is a time for them to do what they need to do as well. They don't need to be there. So since it's the end of summer reading, and we've all started getting our summer reading survey results in, right, Krista? I figure it's also anytime. Some of the ways that Kenton County's summer reading contests are set up are specifically set up with the thought in mind that teens cannot always get to the library. They can't get, so if you have registration at the beginning of summer and then they have to start reading and putting things on a specific log, then they have to get to the library at the beginning of summer. That's one of the reasons we don't have registration. The other reason is that then you get a bunch of empty numbers of people who have just signed up and haven't done anything else. I make it clear when I visit schools at the end of May that they do not need a library card for summer reading. Because as much as we don't like to think about it, a lot of them, especially your manga readers, are reading pirated material. They don't need a library card. A lot of them are checking books out on other people's cards. A lot of my teens are still, their family comes in as one and they check everything out on one card. But on the other side of that, if they are being brought to the library by their grandmother or their aunt brings them to programs or someone who is not the legal guardian, then they might not have a way to get a library card or a way to clear up a library card that might have gotten messed up. We also do online as well as paper entries at Kenton County Public Library. We use Google Docs, which is free, and it turns them into an Excel spreadsheet that you can do all sorts of fun spreadsheet manipulations and statistics with. And I've seen some libraries where there are time limits for prizes where, again, like the registration, you have to get something in by X date, and if someone can't get to the library by X date, then unfortunately they can't participate. And it's just For me, a lot of it is about adapting the summer reading contest for teens that can't get to the physical building, because at a certain point we start having to think, when teens or people in general can't get to our libraries, well, is the library the physical building? Is the library the services we offer? Where else can we offer services? Kenton County Public Library's summer reading contest also goes until the end of August, which I usually do the prize drawing right around September 1st or 2nd for the grand prize. One of the reasons we do that is because I can then go to schools and schedule pickups and, incoming 6th grader nights at the local middle and high schools and say, hey, all of that stuff you've been reading all summer long, or the other version of that is, hey, you know how you had to read that book, that assigned reading that's due on the first day of school? Why not put in an entry for that as well? Our summer reading contest is everything you read, you put in one entry for. This year I had a couple class visits and cafeteria lunchtime visits before that end of the deadline. And one of the things I did was I took a bunch of logs to the cafeteria lunchtime visit, and I said, I know all of you 8th graders should have read, because it was your assignment, this book by now. So fill out an entry form. I give away a drawing for an iPad in a week. Maybe you'll get really, really lucky. It's not going to take anything for you to fill this out. And maybe you'll win something. I think there was an article about passive programs, maybe on Teen Services Underground this morning. Passive programming has never quite worked for me. I don't have teens who hang out at my library. They come, they get their stuff, then they leave. Part of that is because their parents are not dropping them off and picking them up just to kind of hang out or read in the library. Sometimes they can't get a ride to us. Sometimes they can't get a ride to return the books either. They come once a month on a specific day, they get their stuff, they leave. I've also found that in terms of programming, the parents that are doing this and the families that are doing this are hesitant to stick around, basically. So for me, at least, different, I think, at every library, but for me, I've learned that any sort of marketing that's like later today at the library is not necessarily successful, because the library is part of a schedule, and that does not fit into the schedule. That's a change from the schedule. So we do offer, if you are under 18 at the library, we offer reading off fines. We are also, I'm lucky that I work with our circulation supervisor here, and we both have the same sort of feeling that, if your parent checks out a ton of stuff when you're 8 on a card that has your name on it, never returns it, it's not like you can drive to the library to bring it back when you are 8. So there's always trying to fix and make sure that people can use those accounts, so that basically when they're at a point where their teacher says, okay, everybody get on the library's databases and do this assignment, then they can still have access to all that stuff. Then they can still have access to what they need. Just last May was the first year I tried putting return bins at the schools. I will be doing this again next year. I just bought some plastic bins at Target, and these are no questions asked, no fines. Basically, even if you just see a book somewhere, drop it in there. And we got a few back Not very many, but there were definitely ones we got back, which was the point of it, where at a certain point, I just want the book back. I don't care why it's taken so long. It's just, be nice to have it back. And then this picture is, these are our top 10 title displays. This is the most successful display I've ever done. Subject displays don't tend to work for me as much. I discovered that the same system we use to report circulation statistics was also reporting the top 10 titles that were checked out over the last month or so. So I did that, and those are the pictures there. Underneath, there's a list of 4 titles for each book. And then I make a display of the ones that are checked in. This, because I did this on April 1st, this one was also blind date with a book, sort of, where I disguised the books by putting covers on them. But I have a whole database set up that I also share with the rest of the library, so that when I am not there, if someone comes in and says, I want to read The Fault in Our Stars, and maybe you have a copy of The Fault in Our Stars checked in, maybe you don't. But if you don't have it checked in, then that's 4 other titles that someone might want to check out as well. This Chelsea Peretti here ties us in with what I was saying earlier and what we were talking about with the physical building of the library versus library services where they are. I visit some classes where I know that those teens will be brought to the library, so I lead a lot of the things I talk about, lead them back to the library. I say, these are all the programs. Hey, come to this. I visit some other classes where I know they're not going to. So I've worked, again, with our circulation and my managers I create cards, and they're simple limited cards. They can check out 3 things on them. I will put books on hold. There have been times where teens have said to me, is this book at a library branch that's out of my system? And I've contacted the librarians there. Just because if you stand up there and you say, oh, this is a great book, you can check it out when you come to the library, and they're not someone who comes to the library, then to me, that's not the best use of that time. And for me, class visit time is very precious because it's hard for me to get that time. Now, there are other class visits I do where I come in and I bring a crate full of books, and they look through them a little bit, and then we leave them there checked out on the teacher's card for the next month or so. And then they request things, and I can bring them the next month. Those teens may come into the library for things, they may not. But I also like being there as a reminder. If you need something, then we can do it. Let us know. If you are interested in GED materials, then let us know. Library is a no-judgment space. We've got all this sort of stuff that we just want you to use for free. When we are talking about face-to-face, you guys, if you have heard me talk before, you've probably seen this slide before. This is my favorite quote about teens. I think it's important to have library Wi-Fi. It's important to let teens use computers and to use them for things that are more than just school. Yes, everybody use this. Let's just spread it out. Their first choice is face-to-face. And one of the things that we can do is offer them that space, face-to-face, for free. Sometimes it's a matter of educating their parents that that's the important part. And also educating their parents that the face-to-face is the important part, and they're constantly on their phones because they're constantly talking to each other without blowing up their spot. Because there are still teams who they are in maybe a community where they don't feel that they have many peers, and social media will do that for them. And I think sometimes in those situations it's our job to just let them know that we care about them, so that if they run into any trouble with that, then we are someone who they can come and talk to about it without us judging them in terms of, oh, you found someone online, or, oh, this person is like this, that kind of thing. My teens, again, because I've got very young ones, less of them are on social media. I think if I wanted to, it might even be a better idea for me to try to reach parents on Facebook to bring them to the library, especially for programs. And my kind of anecdote about this is I started noticing that there were a bunch of middle schoolers who were following me on Instagram. And so you quickly look through your Instagram to make sure there's nothing too weird on there, right? And I started posting things, either the ads for programs or stuff about upcoming programs. And then, these 7th grade girls would like all of them. So I thought, woo, I'm going to have all these 7th grade girls at my programs because they're liking all my Instagram posts. That's not how 7th grade girls use Instagram. 7th grade girls like everything on Instagram, and they want you to like all of their stuff. And especially now, because Instagram, they've changed what you see. So I still think it's important to be reachable in those spaces that there already are without looking like Mr. Buscemi here. But also realizing that maybe that translates to something inside the library for some of us, or maybe that translates to them using another service. Maybe it does not. So this is what I do instead. If you guys do not know about Remind.com, Remind.com is the best. It was set up for teachers to send information to their students or their parents. Things like, hey, this is the homework assignment, or don't forget that permission slips for the field trip are due tomorrow. Thank you, Krista. But you can use it for basically everything. It's free. It's basically like a blind text. They don't see your message, your personal contact information, and they don't see each other's. And you can schedule them years in advance. I've got like 2017, 2018 Remind schedules picked up. Awesome, Holly. Yeah, everyone should use Remind. And because I'm in a community where the homeschooling population likes to have things specifically for them, I do have a separate homeschool group. You can have, they call them classes in Remind because that's what it's set up for, but you can have a class that's anything. If you have a anime club that they don't come to anything else, or if you have a teen advisory board that you want to send specific messages to, you can set up, this is the teen advisory board class, or this is the anime club class. Remind is the best. Like I said, I don't have teens who hang out in the library, so instead I do things like this. If they're not hanging out for me to recommend books, then you make a big list. And the photography contest, too, if you look at the dates on that, the photography contest is designed, or was designed by me, to get program numbers in January, where I am in a community where if it even looks like maybe it might snow, people will not come to the library. So the photography contest is take a couple pictures, send them back, email them to me, and then there's a gallery show at the end of the summer, or at the end of the month. And then we use the photos for a variety of things as well as that. But that's because I know the way people get around in my community, then I can design things like the photography contest to answer specific needs of both mine and also the communities at specific times. You know, there's teams that don't use the library yet. There's teams that don't use the library anymore. And I think it's always important that we try to keep small the number of teams that don't use the library because they think that the library is not for them. That could be because they don't see themselves reflected in the books. That could be because someone who used to work at the library was super duper mean to teens. That could be because they are a struggling reader and their idea of what a library is big, thick, boring fiction. There's all kinds of different reasons why teens might not use the library. So that is kind of the function of partially of outreach, but also partially of kind of programming and other things to remind people, look at all of the stuff that we do. I would say summer reading summer reading's most important function to me is while people are paying attention to us, because everyone pays attention to the library for summer reading, we get a lot more of attention then. While we're getting that extra attention, we talk about all the stuff we do all year long. So that we don't hear this anymore. You know, the continuum of library services at every age to remind people of all of the different things we offer and how we're constantly changing and trying new things while also keeping the things that people like about us or like about a specific library. There's all kinds of demographic developmental stages for every community, and it's important that we serve all of them at all ages so that we hear this more from everybody, not just Bob's Burgers kids. So we can all do this. And while I do recommend and would love the chat over here, any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions you have, I think Krista might have something in discussion notes as well. I would also like to remind everyone about the Twitter Kentucky Libraries chat. It's the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month. I believe, Krista, does it start at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock? The hashtag is KYLChat, and I think right now it's mostly, oh, awesome, thank you, Krista. But it would be great to have that conversation be school media people as well as public librarians, because we're all trying to serve the same people. Thank you, everybody. Here is my contact information if you need anything.
Awesome. Well, we are coming up quickly on our hour together. That was a little redundant there. Thank you so much, Jessy, for all of the fantastic comments and the ideas, your contact information. We'll go ahead and we'll be up here for a couple of minutes. If folks want to type in questions, I'm just going to move our screen over here. Your discussion notes are still there. They will be emailed out with a certificate. On your left-hand side of the screen at the bottom, you can see a download to get today's PDF. And just a reminder again, after a little bit later this afternoon, you will get an email with with slides, notes, as well as certificate. And then give us just a few days. We really appreciate your patience, and we will get the webinar archived and up on KDLA's website. I think we had a great crowd today. If you're interested, again, please do save the date next month. I will be talking with you about basics with graphic novel collection development. So it will be, again, on a Tuesday at 1:30. If you follow that URL, you'll be able to get to KDLA's continuing education calendar to register. Any other last-minute questions? All right, with that, I want to thank everybody for attending today. I will be ending the recording, but I will stick around just for a couple of more minutes in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.